1967 to 69 Camaros are some of the best-looking sporty cars of the 1960s and remain iconic even to this day. When introduced for the 1967 model year, the Camaro was devised as a direct response to the highly successful Ford Mustang, which had been introduced for the 1965 model year. The Mustang was so successful, it even created its own namesake pony car class of vehicles. Ford had originally intended to sell 100,000 Mustangs per year, but instead ended up selling 400,000 in the somewhat elongated 1965 model year. Chevrolet and also Pontiac clearly wanted a piece of this action. As a result, in the spring of 1965, Chevrolet Public Relations began sending mysterious letters to journalists asking them to save, quote, noon of June 28th for an important SEPAW or SEPAW meeting. Hope you can be on hand to help scratch a cat, end quote. Journalists were somewhat confused by this initial note, but received a follow-up the next day stating that the Society for Eradication of Panthers from the automotive world would hold its first and last meeting on June 28th. When June 28th arrived, GM held a live press conference from Detroit's now-demolished Statler Hilton Hotel, chaired by Chevrolet General Manager Pete Estes, showing off a new vehicle called the Camaro. Ironically, before the name Camaro was selected, the vehicle was formally codenamed Panther, a name Ford would later use to label the platform which underpinned many of its large-body vehicles, like Crown Victorias, Mercury Marquis, and Lincoln Town Cars. Chevrolet had allegedly selected the Camaro name because it was French slang for friend, pal, or comrade. The car officially went on sale in September of 1966 for the 1967 model year, and the first-generation Camaro would last until the 1969 model year and was offered as a two-door 2+2 coupe or convertible. And this is where we come to an interesting piece of history with respect to the Camaro, and yes, the Firebird even, convertible. As the convertible was being developed, GM engineers and even Pete Estes himself were not happy with the original ride that it offered. The lack of a full perimeter frame, coupled with removal of key structural integrity elements like the entire vehicle top, contributed to an issue with early developmental cars. These vehicles exhibited considerable cowl shake and an overall unpleasant ride replete with shimmying. Estes allegedly demanded his engineering team find an appropriate solution for the vehicle, thinking they would re-engineer key chassis components or maybe even the entire chassis itself. Instead, the engineers decided to use a technique that had been previously employed on the 1958-9 Thunderbirds and also the Corvair. This technique was the use of fluid-filled vibration dampeners, 4 to be exact, with one placed in each corner of the vehicle. These assemblies, nicknamed cocktail shakers by automotive enthusiasts, were heavy and weighed between 20 and 25 pounds each. They were shipped empty to GM assembly plants and filled on the line with automatic transmission fluid before being installed in the vehicles. It was an inelegant but proven solution and didn't please Pete Estes, particularly because it added nearly 100 pounds in weight to the overall car. However, the solution helped so much that it was retained for production. Because of their weight and how many individuals use their Camaros, shall we say, sportingly, owners sometimes remove the front, the rear, or all of the cocktail shakers altogether. But they do serve a function and a purpose. Here's a cutaway view of the insides of one of these cocktail shakers, and you can see the heavy mass in the middle suspended by a spring on either side. In this case, the assembly was cut open radially, and you can also see the automatic transmission fluid that leak out. The weight in between the springs was specifically tuned so that it would help quell the vibrations of the car. And despite what many people say, if you're looking to replace your cocktail shaker assemblies, be aware that the 1967 to 68 versions do differ from 1969 versions and are not interchangeable. Unfortunately, no replicas are available today and only used assemblies are available, which you can find online for relatively high prices. $250 per assembly is not uncommon. However, if you want to make your convertible ride like it did from the factory, these cocktail shakers are essential components to add back in. When relatively flexible bodies, like the Camaro has, are subjected to loading, the masses within the cocktail shakers absorb much of the vibration energy and frankly work quite well. If you're still experiencing vibration with your Camaro and have these cocktail shakers installed, you may want to ensure your tires are properly balanced, your shocks and springs are in good working order, or potentially consider installing new body bushings. Some owners also add subframe connectors to their Camaro to help improve the overall body rigidity, and this indeed is something that can in fact work quite well, not just on the first generation Camaros, but also subsequent generations, particularly the third generation that had a very, very flexible unibody. Unfortunately, until the last few generations, body rigidity was never a Camaro strong suit, and this issue was often exacerbated by convertible modifications or, in later years, T-tops, which removed a significant portion of the structural roof panel. And when stacked up against other vehicles of the time, the first-generation Camaros do still exhibit some so-called unhappy body vibrations. However, buyers today are generally not procuring Camaros because they're looking for excellent rides. They're simply looking for a super stylish vehicle, often from their childhood, which can exhibit still respectable performance. Little do many know that lurking under that stylish first-generation Camaro body are a number of components that are shared with the Chevrolet Nova in a similar fashion to how the Mustang borrowed numerous components from the Ford Falcon. Regardless, it all worked very well for Chevrolet, and the first-generation Camaro was a sales success and remains one of the most iconic Chevrolets to this day, so much so that when Chevrolet reintroduced the Camaro in 2009 after being sunset for the 2002 model year and later, it took inspiration from the first-generation Camaro in penning the new styling. There is one dramatic difference, though, between that 2009 Camaro and the first-generation 67 to 69 Camaro, and that is, at least on the coupes, the new ones were much harder to see out of, with a lot less daylight and smaller daylight openings across the vehicle. Something that perhaps did not endow the Camaro to a number of its customers or fan base in that they couldn't see out of it, but they still liked being seen in a very stylish vehicle that certainly looked cool. Hope you enjoyed this feature on the Camaro cocktail shakers that were also used on the Firebird and similar versions on the Corvair. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out the video thumbnails at bottom left and right for some suggestions for you. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, take care.